The red warning lights flashed across the command bridge of the Imperial Space Station. Sovereigns watch as Admiral Korath stared at the impossible readings on his screen. His 4 blue arms moved quickly over the control panel, checking the data again and again. Something was very wrong in his quiet corner of the galaxy. "Sir, patrol ship Silent Hunter is sending another report," called out Lieutenant Yex from the communication station. Her voice carried a note of worry that made the Admiral's stomach twist. "Put Captain Veltar through," Korath ordered, his deep voice echoing in the circular command room. The holographic image of Captain Veltar appeared in the center of the bridge. The young officer's green skin had turned pale, and his usually steady hands were shaking. In 30 years of commanding this remote station, Korath had never seen one of his captains look so frightened. "Admiral, the readings are confirmed by all 3 of my sensor arrays," Veltar began, his voice barely steady. "There's a vessel out there, approximately 3 kilometers in length. Configuration unknown. Energy output is off the charts. Sir, our computers can't even classify what kind of weapons it's carrying." Korath felt his 2 hearts skip a beat. "Sensor malfunction." "Negative, sir. I've run full diagnostics twice. The ship is real, and it's not going away." Veltar paused, looking down at his readings. "Admiral, there's something else. Computer analysis suggests the vessel is of human origin." The bridge fell completely silent. Every officer turned to stare at their admiral, waiting for his response. Korath's mind raced through everything he knew about humans, which wasn't much. They were listed in the old Imperial records as a primitive species from a small blue planet in a distant spiral arm. The last official survey of their world had been conducted over 200 years ago. "Are you certain about the species identification?" Korath asked slowly. "As certain as our computers can be, sir. The hull design, the propulsion signatures, even the metal composition matches the limited data we have on human technology. But Admiral, that's impossible. According to our records, they barely achieved basic spaceflight when we last checked on them." Korath stood up from his command chair and walked to the main viewing window. Outside, the stars looked the same as they had for decades. His sector was supposed to be peaceful, boring even. It was a retirement posting for old officers like himself who had earned a quiet end to their careers. "Sir, incoming transmission from patrol ship Swift Wind," Lieutenant Yex announced. "Captain Morden is reporting similar readings from his position." Within minutes, 2 more patrol vessels confirmed the impossible. There was indeed a massive human warship in Imperial space, and it was unlike anything in their databases. The energy readings suggested weapons that could destroy entire fleets and shields that could withstand anything the Empire could throw at them. Korath returned to his chair and activated the emergency communication system. This information had to reach the Galactic Council immediately. On the core worlds, the leaders of 100 different species would need to decide how to respond to this impossible development. "Lieutenant Yex, send a Priority 1 message to Proxima Prime," he ordered. "Unknown human vessel detected in Sector 7. Vessel appears to possess advanced technology. Request immediate guidance." As the message raced across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, Korath tried to remember what he knew about humans. The old records painted them as a violent, warlike species that had nearly destroyed their own planet with nuclear weapons. They had been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years. Their cities were polluted ruins, their forests were gone, and their oceans were poisoned. How could such a primitive, self-destructive species have developed technology that made Imperial warships look like toys? "Sir, the human vessel is moving," Captain Veltar reported from his patrol ship. "It's heading directly toward our position." Korath felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air of the command bridge. "Raise shields. All ships, maintain distance but be ready for anything." The next few hours passed with agonizing slowness. The human ship moved through space with an elegance that Imperial vessels could never match. It seemed to glide between the stars like a living creature, its dark hull reflecting no light at all. Occasionally, energy readings would spike as the vessel used systems that Imperial science insisted couldn't exist. Finally, the communication system crackled to life with a message that would change everything. "Imperial Station Sovereigns Watch, this is Commander James Harrison of the United Earth Federation vessel Defiant. We request permission to speak with your commanding officer." The voice was calm, confident, and speaking perfect Imperial Standard language. Korath's hands trembled as he realized that not only had humans somehow developed impossible technology, they had also learned the official language of the Galactic Empire. "This is Admiral Korath, commanding this sector. How do you know our language, and what are your intentions in Imperial space?" There was a pause before the human commander responded. Admiral, we've been aware of the Galactic Empire for quite some time. As for our intentions, we're here to talk. We believe it's time our species had a proper conversation. Korath stared at the communication panel in shock. The humans hadn't just survived their primitive state, they had been watching the Empire. For how long? What did they know? And most importantly, what did they want? The quiet retirement sector that Korath had commanded for decades was about to become the center of the most important first contact in galactic history. He just hoped he was ready for whatever came next. The emergency meeting hall on Proxima Prime had never seen such chaos. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, and growls that echoed off the crystal walls. At the center of it all, Counselor Thresh stood behind the main podium, his old reptilian hands shaking as he accessed the ancient archives. Order! We must have order, shouted Speaker Vexere, her crystalline form pulsing with bright blue light. The noise slowly died down as hundreds of alien eyes turned toward the main display screen. Thresh activated the holographic system with a practiced gesture. Images of Earth appeared above the assembly, a blue and green world that looked nothing like the paradise worlds of the core systems. The planet showed signs of terrible damage. Brown scars marked where forests once grew. The oceans were murky and filled with floating debris. Many of the great cities were nothing but ruins. Humans, Thresh announced, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. Species designation Homo sapiens. Last Imperial survey conducted 198 standard years ago. Status at that time, primitive pre-space civilization, multiple warring factions, severe environmental damage. The images changed to show human military vehicles, crude metal machines that ran on fossil fuels and fired simple explosive projectiles. Compared to Imperial plasma weapons and energy shields, they looked like children's toys. Councillor Krendal, whose people had joined the Empire 500 years ago, raised one of his 6 arms. How is this possible? Our best scientists estimated that humans would need at least 5 centuries to develop basic interstellar travel. How could they create technology that surpasses our own? Before anyone could answer, the communication system activated. Admiral Korath's worried face appeared on the main screen, broadcast live from his distant station. Council members, the situation has become more complicated, the Admiral began. The human commander has agreed to speak with us. His name is Commander James Harrison, and he claims to represent something called the United Earth Federation. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the assembly. Earth Federation? The records showed humans as scattered tribes barely capable of working together. There's more, Admiral Korath continued. Commander Harrison is speaking perfect Imperial Standard language. He knows our diplomatic protocols. He even addressed me by my correct rank and title before I told him what they were. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Councillor Thresh's scaled face turned pale. That's impossible. Imperial Standard is taught only to member species. Humans have never been contacted using official channels. I'm afraid it gets worse, Admiral Korath said. Commander Harrison has requested a formal diplomatic meeting. But here's what troubles me most, he doesn't seem surprised to encounter us. If anything, he appears to have been expecting this contact. Speaker Vexeare's crystal form flickered between blue and red, showing her deep concern. Admiral, what is your assessment of their military capabilities? Unknown, but potentially significant. The vessel's energy readings suggest weapons and defensive systems beyond anything in our databases. However, they have made no hostile moves. The commander has been polite and professional in all communications. Councillor Yethmore, whose people specialized in military intelligence, stood up from his position near the back of the chamber. Admiral Korath, have you attempted to scan their vessel for detailed technical information? Yes, Councillor. Our sensors cannot penetrate their hull. Whatever materials they're using block all of our scanning attempts. It's as if the ship isn't really there, even though we can see it clearly. The implication sent waves of fear through the assembled representatives. For over 1,000 years, the Galactic Empire had maintained peace through superior technology and military strength. No species had ever challenged imperial authority because no species had ever possessed the technology to do so. Now, a supposedly primitive species from a damaged world had appeared with a vessel that could apparently ignore imperial sensors and possibly imperial weapons. What do they want? Asked Councillor Melthara, her insect-like voice barely audible above the worried chatter. Commander Harrison says he wants to talk, Admiral Korath replied. He's requested a meeting aboard Orbital Station Kepler-1. He says he has information that the council needs to hear. The chamber fell silent as the full weight of the situation settled over the assembled representatives. For the first time in Imperial history, they were dealing with an unknown species that might actually be more advanced than they were. Councillor Thresh cleared his throat and addressed the assembly. Council members, we face a situation without precedent. Our options appear to be limited. We can agree to this meeting and hope to learn more about human intentions, or we can refuse and risk making enemies of a species whose capabilities we don't understand. What if this is some kind of trap? Called out Councillor Zekrin from the military section. What if there are more human ships hidden throughout our territory? Admiral Koratha's image flickered as he checked his instruments. Councillor, our long-range sensors show no other vessels in this sector. However, given their apparent ability to block our scans, we cannot be certain. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some representatives wanted to mobilize the Imperial fleet immediately. Others argued for caution and diplomacy. A few suggested attempting to contact other human settlements to learn more about this Earth Federation. Finally, Speaker Vexera called for quiet. Admiral Korath, you will proceed with the diplomatic meeting. Take whatever precautions you deem necessary, but learn what these humans want. The Council will remain in emergency session until we understand the full scope of this situation. As the communication ended, Admiral Korath stared out at the strange human vessel floating peacefully in space. In all his years of service, he had never felt so unprepared for what came next. The meeting room aboard orbital station Kepler-1 felt cold despite the standard temperature settings. Admiral Korath sat at the polished metal table with his diplomatic team, waiting for the humans to arrive. His forearms fidgeted nervously with his ceremonial rank insignia as he tried to prepare for what might be the most important conversation in galactic history. The door slid open with a soft hiss, and 3 humans walked in. Admiral Korath had seen images of humans before, but meeting them in person was different. They looked smaller than he had expected, with only 2 arms and strange patches of hair on their heads. But there was something in their eyes that made him uncomfortable, a confidence that seemed out of place for representatives of a primitive species. Admiral Korath, said the lead human, extending his hand in what Korath recognized as a human greeting gesture. I'm Commander James Harrison. These are my officers, Lieutenant Colonel Emma Blake and Major Michael Torres. Korath shook the offered hand, surprised by the firm grip. Commander Harrison, welcome to Imperial Space. Though I must admit, your presence here raises many questions. Harrison smiled and activated a small device that projected a 3-dimensional display above the table. I'm sure it does, Admiral. But before we begin, I should clarify something important. This isn't actually first contact between our species. The holographic display showed detailed schematics of Imperial military vessels, complete with weapon specifications, shield frequencies, and engine capabilities. Koratha's 2 hearts nearly stopped as he recognized classified information that should have been known only to the highest levels of Imperial command. Where did you get this information? Korath demanded, his voice barely controlled. Lieutenant Colonel Blake stepped forward and touched the display. The images changed to show Imperial trade routes, mining operations, and colony installations. The United Earth Federation has been monitoring Imperial activities for 147 years. We know about your expansion patterns, your resource extraction methods, and your policies toward member species. Major Torres added more data to the display. We know about the forced relocations on Kepler 442b, where you moved 30 million people to make room for mining operations. We know about the cultural assimilation programs that have eliminated 16 distinct civilizations in the past century. We know about the taxation systems that keep member worlds dependent on Imperial trade. Korath stared at the information in shock. Everything the humans were showing him was accurate, but it painted a picture of Imperial expansion that looked very different from the official version taught in Imperial schools. To outside observers, the Empire appeared not as benevolent protectors, but as conquerors who destroyed diversity in favor of uniformity. You've been spying on us, Korath said quietly. We've been learning from you, Commander Harrison corrected. My species has a talent for studying others and adapting quickly. We watched how you expanded, how you governed, and how you treated species that resisted your authority. We decided we didn't want to become another absorbed civilization. So you developed advanced technology to fight us? Korath asked. Harrison shook his head. We developed advanced technology to protect ourselves and others. There's a difference, Admiral. Would you like a demonstration? Before Korath could respond, Harrison spoke into a communication device. Commander Harrison to Defiant. Please begin the exercise with Admiral Korath's permission. Korath hesitated, then activated his own communicator. Admiral Korath to Task Force 7. Cruisers Thunder, Lightning, and Storm will engage the human vessel in non-lethal combat training. Use practice settings only. Through the station's viewing windows, they could see the 3 Imperial cruisers moving into position around the human ship Defiant. Each cruiser was over a kilometer long and armed with the most advanced weapons the Empire possessed. Against the single human vessel, the outcome should have been obvious. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for generations. The Defiant seemed to shimmer and fade, like heat waves rising from hot ground. Imperial weapons fired at empty space as the ship appeared to phase in and out of normal reality. When the human vessel reappeared, it was inside the formation of Imperial ships, having somehow passed through their shields without triggering any alarms. Within minutes, all 3 Imperial cruisers found their weapon systems disabled and their engines offline. The humans had accomplished this without firing a single shot that anyone could detect. How? Was all Admiral Korath could manage to say. Phase variance technology, Major Torres explained casually. We shift our molecular structure slightly out of normal spacetime. Your weapons pass right through us, but we can still affect normal matter when we choose to. That's impossible according to Imperial science, Korath protested. Your science is based on what your species discovered and developed, Lieutenant Colonel Blake replied. Other species might discover different solutions to the same problems. Humans have always been good at finding new ways to do things. Commander Harrison deactivated the display and looked directly at Admiral Korath. We're not here to conquer you, Admiral. We're here to offer you a choice. The Imperial model of expansion is failing. You have rebellions brewing in 17 sectors, resource shortages on 43 worlds, and growing resistance to cultural assimilation programs. What are you suggesting? Korath asked, though he dreaded the answer. Partnership instead of domination. Cooperation instead of conquest. A federation where each species contributes its strengths while maintaining its identity. Harrison leaned forward. We're offering to share some of our technology, but only if the Empire agrees to fundamental changes in how it operates. Admiral Korath looked out at his disabled cruisers and realized that everything he had believed about Imperial superiority was wrong. The humans weren't just more advanced technologically, they had spent centuries studying Imperial weaknesses and preparing for this moment. The question now was whether the Empire would choose to learn from them or fight them. The news of the disabled Imperial cruisers spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On every Imperial world, citizens gathered around communication screens to watch footage of 3 mighty warships floating helplessly in space while a single human vessel demonstrated technology that shouldn't exist. Panic began to set in as people realized their protectors might not be as powerful as they had always believed. In the emergency chambers of the Galactic Council on Proxima Prime, chaos ruled. Representatives shouted at each other in dozens of different languages while military advisors frantically updated defense plans that suddenly seemed worthless. Fleet Admiral Rector paced back and forth behind the speaker's platform, his massive form casting long shadows across the worried faces of the assembled councillors. We must mobilize every available warship, Rector declared, his voice booming through the chamber. If these humans possess such advanced technology, they represent a threat to every Imperial world. But before the Council could vote on military action, every communication screen in the chamber activated simultaneously. The image of Commander James Harrison appeared, broadcast from the human ship to every corner of Imperial space. Somehow, the humans had overridden the most secure communication networks in the galaxy. Citizens of the Galactic Empire, Harrison began, his calm voice reaching billions of beings across thousands of worlds. My name is Commander James Harrison, representing the United Earth Federation. I'm speaking to you today because your leaders need to hear what we have to say, and we believe you have the right to hear it too. Councillor Thresh tried frantically to cut the transmission, but nothing worked. The humans had complete control over Imperial communications. We are not here to conquer your worlds or destroy your civilization, Harrison continued. We're here to offer you something your empire has never provided, a choice. The image behind Harrison changed to show peaceful scenes from Earth, green forests growing where wastelands once existed, clean cities powered by advanced technology, and humans of different cultures working together while maintaining their unique traditions. 200 years ago, my species nearly destroyed itself through war and environmental damage. We learned from those mistakes. We discovered that strength doesn't come from forcing everyone to be the same. True strength comes from cooperation between different peoples, each contributing their unique abilities to solve common problems. Major Michael Torres appeared beside Harrison on the screen. We've studied your empire for nearly 150 years. We've watched how you expand, how you govern, and how you treat species that resist assimilation. We've seen the rebellions brewing, the resource shortages growing, and the increasing resistance to imperial control. On imperial worlds throughout the galaxy, citizens looked at each other with new understanding. Many had felt the effects of imperial policies but had never connected their local problems to larger patterns of control and exploitation. The imperial model is failing, Lieutenant Colonel Emma Blake added as she joined the transmission. Forcing uniformity on diverse species creates underlying tensions that eventually explode into violence. We've identified 17 sectors where rebellion is becoming inevitable. The display changed to show detailed analysis of imperial economic systems, military deployments, and social programs. Everything the humans presented was accurate, but it revealed patterns that even many imperial officials had never recognized. We propose something different, Harrison said, looking directly into the camera. A true federation of equals, where each species maintains its cultural identity while contributing to collective defense and exploration. No more forced relocations. No more cultural assimilation programs. No more taxation without representation. Fleet Admiral Rector tried to interrupt the broadcast, but his attempts were blocked. The humans continued their presentation with images of advanced medical technology, environmental restoration systems, and defensive weapons that protected rather than conquered. We're prepared to share selected technologies with any world that chooses to join a reformed galactic government, Torres explained. Medical advances that could extend lifespans by centuries. Environmental restoration techniques that could heal damaged worlds. Defensive systems that could protect entire star systems from any threat. The offer sent shock waves through imperial space. Many worlds had struggled with disease, environmental damage, and resource depletion for generations. The possibility of solutions to these problems was incredibly appealing. But we're not offering these technologies to the current imperial government, Blake clarified. We're offering them to a new federation based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. Harrison stepped forward again, his expression serious. We understand this represents a fundamental change to your civilization. We're prepared to give the Empire time to consider our proposal. However, several Imperial member worlds have already contacted us expressing interest in joining a reformed federation. The statement caused uproar in the council chambers. If member worlds were already considering abandoning the Empire, the entire structure of galactic government could collapse. We have also prepared for the possibility that Imperial leadership might choose military action rather than reform, Harrison added quietly. Our defensive capabilities extend far beyond what you witness today. We have allies throughout the galaxy who share our vision of voluntary cooperation. And we have had 2 centuries to prepare for this moment. The transmission ended as suddenly as it had begun, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. On world after world, citizens gathered in public squares and meeting halls to discuss what they had just heard. For the first time in over 1,000 years, they had been offered an alternative to imperial rule. In the council chambers, Admiral Koratha's report from orbital station Kepler-1 took on new significance. The humans weren't just technologically advanced, they had spent centuries preparing a comprehensive challenge to imperial authority. They had intelligence networks, military capabilities, and political support that the Empire had never suspected. The choice facing the Galactic Council was stark: accept fundamental changes to their civilization or fight a war against an enemy that might be better prepared than anyone imagined. As emergency sessions convened and military units mobilized, one question echoed throughout Imperial space: what would happen next? The Galactic Council had been in continuous session for 5 days. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the Great Chamber, their voices raised in heated argument that echoed off the crystal walls. Sleep-deprived councillors clutched cups of stimulant drinks while military advisors updated holographic displays showing fleet positions throughout the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Rector stood at the center podium, his massive form trembling with barely controlled rage. We cannot allow primitives to dictate terms to a civilization that has ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years, he declared, slamming his fist on the speaking platform. I propose immediate mobilization of the Imperial Navy. We will show these humans what real power looks like. Councillor Thresh raised one scaled hand in opposition. Admiral Rector, did you not see the demonstration? 3 of our most advanced cruisers were disabled in minutes without the humans firing a single detectable shot. What makes you think a larger fleet would fare better? Numbers, old friend, Rector replied with grim confidence. They may have superior technology, but they are still just one ship. I have 600 vessels at my command. Even advanced shields cannot withstand concentrated fire from that many weapons. Admiral Koratha's voice came through the communication system from his distant station. Council members, I must advise caution. My conversations with Commander Harrison suggest the humans have been preparing for military conflict as thoroughly as they prepared for diplomatic contact. There may be more to their capabilities than we've seen. But Rector had already made his decision. The longer we delay, the more Imperial worlds will consider abandoning their loyalty to established authority. I'm taking my fleet to deal with this threat before it spreads further. Speaker Vexera tried to call for an official vote, but Rector was already leaving the chamber. Within hours, his massive battle fleet was moving toward the Outer Rim, where the human ship waited. The battle began at dawn, Galactic Standard Time, in the empty space between two dead stars. Rector's 600 ships formed a perfect attack formation, massive dreadnoughts in the center, fast cruisers on the flanks, and support vessels providing covering fire. It was the largest Imperial fleet assembled in over 2 centuries. The human ship Defiant floated alone in the center of the formation, seeming impossibly small against the metal wall of Imperial vessels surrounding it. Rector opened communications one final time. Surrender now, and your crew will be treated according to military law, he announced. Commander Harrison's response was calm and measured. Admiral Rector, we really hoped it wouldn't come to this. Please reconsider your course of action. Fire all weapons, Rector ordered. What happened next would be remembered as the shortest major battle in galactic history. The moment Imperial weapons began firing, space around the human vessel seemed to tear apart. Reality twisted and folded as more human ships materialized from apparently empty space. Not just 1 or 2 vessels, but dozens of them, each one appearing exactly where Imperial formation gaps left them vulnerable. The human fleet didn't just have advanced phase technology, they had been waiting invisibly throughout Imperial space for exactly this moment. Every human vessel that appeared was positioned perfectly to protect Imperial ships from their own crossfire while simultaneously disabling weapons and engines. But the most shocking moment came when Admiral Rector's flagship, the massive dreadnought Imperial Might, suffered a catastrophic reactor overload. The ship's engines began to explode in chain reactions that would have killed all 8,000 crew members aboard. It was Commander Harrison's ship that saved them. The Defiant appeared directly between the exploding dreadnought and 3 Imperial rescue vessels, using its own shields to contain the blast while human engineers somehow stabilized the Imperial reactor from a distance. When the emergency was over, Rector found his crew alive and his ship intact, rescued by the same humans he had tried to destroy. The image of human vessels protecting Imperial civilians while under attack spread across the galaxy within hours. On world after world, citizens saw something they had never witnessed before, an enemy who valued life more than victory. The aftermath moved quickly. Led by species that had chafed under Imperial rule for generations, world after world voted to leave the Empire and join the new Galactic Federation that the humans proposed. The transition wasn't perfect, some regions remained loyal to Imperial authority, and others experienced brief periods of chaos as old systems collapsed. But for the first time in galactic history, there was a real alternative to Imperial dominance. 6 months later, Admiral Korath stood on the observation deck of Federation Station Alpha, the new headquarters of the reformed galactic government. Through the transparent walls, he could see human and alien engineers working side by side to build something unprecedented, a space station designed by dozens of different species, each contributing their unique architectural and technological insights. Commander Harrison joined him at the viewing window, both men watching as a crystalline engineer worked with a human technician to install new communication systems that could translate between over 200 different languages in real time. Your people accomplished something remarkable, Korath observed. In less than a year, you've transformed the structure of galactic civilization. Harrison shook his head. We didn't accomplish anything alone, Admiral. We just offered people a choice they'd never had before. The real accomplishment belongs to every species that chose cooperation over conquest. Outside the station, ships from dozens of worlds moved in peaceful formation, carrying trade goods, scientific data, and cultural exchanges between civilizations that had been forced into uniformity for 1,000 years. The galaxy had discovered that diversity wasn't weakness, it was the source of true strength. The irony wasn't lost on either man. Humanity, once dismissed as primitive and violent, had become the catalyst for teaching an ancient empire that the strongest foundations weren't built through force, but through the willing cooperation of free peoples choosing to work together.